This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Africa. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Let's start with how the markets began today. It struggled to get direction today. Then there was investors. On one hand, there was that better than expected U.S. jobs report, which should have been good news, but seemed to only concern investors more that tighter monetary policy would soon follow. All the indices we track here lost ground, with the exception of South Africa's JSE, which was a mixed bag. Some of its sectors performed well, though, enabling that bourse to close 0.2% higher. Let's now take a look at other news making headlines. Pomp and splendor as the 24th Winter Olympics begin in Beijing. Crude oil production in South Sudan dips, complicating economic plans. And dozens arrested in Nigeria following a multi-million-dollar fraud investigation. Well, the Beijing 2022 Olympic Winter Games have officially begun as Chinese President Xi Jinping welcomed world leaders and athletes at the opening ceremony in the National Stadium. President Xi and the president of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, arrived at the stadium shortly before the start of the opening ceremony. The ceremony was held on the first day of spring in the Chinese traditional calendar. It began with a performance with glowing green stalks to convey the vitality of the season. The leaders then witnessed the raising of the Chinese national flag, followed by an explosion of white and green fireworks that spelled the word spring. The Olympic rings then emerged after a cube resembling a block of ice was broken by ice hockey players. That was followed by the traditional parade of nations, with each of the 91 delegations preceded by a woman carrying a placard in the shape of a snowflake. Both Bach and Xi announced the opening of the games before the Olympic flag was raised. Finally, the Olympic cauldron was lit in a most creative way. Two young torchbearers left their torch burning in the middle of a huge snowflake made by placards of all delegations participating in the Games. The Beijing Winter Olympics has gathered the global community with around 2,900 athletes from more than 90 countries and regions, the biggest ever Winter Olympics. Well, CGTN reporter Zheng Yibing tells us more about the world leaders and heads of international organizations that have arrived in Beijing, as well as the spectacular technology and graphics on display at the 24th edition of the Winter Showpiece was declared open.
Well, for the ceremony, the 32 dignitaries and 18 world leaders were present for the opening ceremony, including Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, and heads of international organizations like the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach witnessed the ceremony. With the idea of holding a simple and excellent Winter Olympics, the ceremony did not spend huge costs inviting celebrities to perform. And new technologies are applied this time to present the stunning visual and that kind of effects. The biggest moment during the show is the lighting of the Olympic flame in the cauldron. And the lighting itself is the last leg of the 3D Olympic torch relay, with the aim to pass on light and hope to people around the world. And from today, Beijing has become the first city of the Dual Olympics in the world. Asked the IOC President Thomas Bach yesterday during a press conference that how does he interpret the Olympic new model together. He said that togetherness will be the reflection in Beijing 2022 on the unity of the Games and athletes, and many challenges can be solved.
Well, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also been speaking about the Beijing Winter Olympics.
Well, I would like the world to be more united. I'd like the world to be more equal. It's a long road, but it is a road that we are able to run like in the Olympics together. To have everybody that will be seeing, that will be living, that will be feeling the Olympic Games, and makes people enthusiastic everywhere, seeing their athletes, seeing their heroes, seeing the people they appreciate.
Earlier today, the third and final day of the Beijing Winter Olympics torch relay saw around 101 torchbearers carry the flame on a trip around the Summer Palace. And afterwards, sports scene's Wang Dong spoke to one of those torchbearers, Hu Feng, who shared her feelings about the experience and expressed her best wishes for the Games.
Congratulations, Hu Feng, on your becoming one of the participants for the torch relay on the opening ceremony day. For this occasion, you must be honored to participate in this process as one of the torch relay participants.
I feel very proud to be selected as a torchbearer. I prepared for this torch relay for a long time. When I was carrying the torch today, I was thinking that I wish my country could be prosperous forever. The theme of the torch relay is to run towards the city of the future, and our torchbearers are the ambassadors to fulfill this responsibility.
Well, since the first Winter Olympics took place in the French city of Chamonix in 1924, the event has undergone a long path of development. The latest edition in a 98-year-old tradition of spectacular competitions will now be on display at the 24th edition of the Games in Beijing. Sports scene's Jiang Mingxi tells us more.
In 1924, just 258 athletes from 16 countries took part in the first Winter Olympics. But that total has now soared to nearly 3,000 competitors from 91 nations and regions, with the number of gold medals on offer up from 17 to 109. A group of a dozen European countries, along with the North American duo of Canada and the USA, have consistently ranked among the top medal contenders from the start. While China made its Winter Games debut in 1980, with a 28-athlete delegation participating in 18 events at Lake Placid. And it wouldn't be long before Chinese competitors started reaching the podium, with short-track speed skater Yang Yang winning the country's first Winter Olympics gold medal in the women's 1,000 meters in Salt Lake City in 2002. From Chamonix in 1924 through Pyeongchang 2018, Norway leads the all-time table with 368 medals, while that nation's cross-country skier Marit Bjørgen paces the individual tally, with a record 15 top 3 placements. Meanwhile, China has made steady progress and now has 13 gold, 28 silver, and 21 bronze medals in total, with the Beijing 2022 hosts bidding to create new history this year on home snow and ice.
Well, let's now turn our attention to the day's business news. Our starting point tonight is in South Sudan, where the negative impact of COVID-19, along with heavy flooding since 2020, continue to take their toll on oil production. According to officials, South Sudan's oil output plunged from 170,000 barrels a day to the current 156,000 barrels per day. The rapid decline has been attributed to the depletion of some oil wells. South Sudan has earned around $1.4 billion in gross oil revenues. $1.1 billion went to direct transfers. About $148 million was paid to neighboring Sudan as costs for processing, transportation, and transit fees. It's now projected to collect $135 million in non-oil revenues in this fiscal year. Well, joining us now for more on that story is our correspondent Patrick Guyette, who is in Juba for us. Hi there, Patrick. Thank you so much for joining us. Patrick, what has the impact of that reduction in oil production been on Sudan's economy so far?
Yeah, the impact is actually huge, Hannah. The issue is that South Sudan depends a lot on oil. Actually, 90% of the budget is funded using oil money. So it really affects the country whenever there is drop in oil production. For example, now workers or civil servants in South Sudan have been going for months without salaries. That's a very big concern. Another issue also is the issue of developmental projects, like, for example, the roads that the government is building. All these roads are actually being built using the oil money. So once there's reduction like that, those developmental projects are affected. Not only that, there is also the issue of the peace deal implementation. A peace deal was signed in 2018. Eventually actually ending or tentatively ending the war in the country, and there is now relative peace. But this peace agreement has brought with it a huge government in place, 550 members of parliament, almost 40 ministries and so forth. So all these peace deal organs need actually money, and that money comes normally from oil. So reduction in the in oil production negatively affects really South Sudan.
Patrick, what are authorities saying that they plan to do to increase output?
Yeah, one thing the government is saying is that it has discovered actually a lot of oil in other areas that had never been, explored before and exploited, before. And for that reason, it is calling on other companies or the existing companies in the country to come and invest in the oil sector. Another thing is that they are also trying to encourage other investors to come to the country to invest in other areas as well. So because the reason as to why there is decline in production according to the government is because most of the oil fields are now old, they are aging, and therefore production is declining. So there is a very serious possibility that within the next few years, some of those oil fields will be decommissioned. So they are moving to new oil fields to ensure that production is increased using exploitation of oil from the new oil fields. Hannah.
But Patrick, Sudan relying heavily on oil revenues can also be problematic in the long term. Are there any discussions and plans of how the economy can be further diversified to generate income from other resources South Sudan has other than oil?
Yeah. There are some movements we are seeing the government is making now. For example, one of the vice presidents has been put to head what they call economic cluster with a number of ministries, including the Ministry of Investment, Finance, and so forth, where they are coming up with avenues of looking for other sources of revenue. For example, the South Sudan Revenue Authority has been set up, is headed by a Tanzanian national who is an expert in that area. They expect that the revenue from other sectors other than oil will improve. They are also, according to the Ministry of Investment, they are trying to remove some unnecessary taxes that investors have been very concerned about, so that they encourage investment in other areas such as manufacturing. So there are other things that they are trying to do to ensure that they develop also non-oil revenue sector. They're encouraging South Sudanese people to also become entrepreneurs, to invest, to become business people, so that they can contribute to the economy through the taxation that they pay. So that cluster is working and coming up with a lot of policies. So hopefully the other sectors also will, the non-oil revenue sector will be developed.
Thank you so much for all that, Patrick. Patrick Ayet speaking to us from Juba, South Sudan. Well, let's head over to Namibia, where a state-owned oil company has announced that oil major Shell and Qatar Energy have discovered light oil deposits offshore the country. The National Petroleum Corporation of Namibia, however, says further work is needed to determine the quality, size, and viability of the reservoir. The drilling operations commenced in early December of 2021 and, according to shareholders, were safely completed in early February of this year. Namibia does not currently produce any fossil fuels, although its northern neighbor Angola is a major producer. Well, we head over to southern Africa now, where Zambia's creditors may have to take losses of about 2/3 of the country is to meet the IMF's requirements for debt restructuring. That's according to a study by groups advocating for debt forgiveness. The study was published on Friday by an alliance of local activist organizations and the Jubilee Debt Campaign UK. Zambia, which defaulted on its debt in 2020, has capacity to repay between $2.8 billion and $3.5 billion of debt over the next 14 years. However, according to the study, about $7 billion would have to be written off, implying a haircut of between 64% and 71% for private and bilateral lenders. Well, let's now take a look at the day's corporate headlines. Telecoms company Airtel Africa has reported a sharp rise in its third quarter profit, driven by strong revenue growth. According to the company, pre-tax profit for the 3 months of December rose 48.5% to $297 million, with revenue up 21.7% to $3.4 billion. For the 9 months to December 31st, profit after tax almost doubled to $514 million as revenues grew by 21.7% to $3.4 billion. Its customer base, meanwhile, expanded to 125.8 million, growing by 5.8%. Moody's Corporation has agreed to acquire a majority stake in global credit rating company as it looks to further expand in Africa. The transaction is still subject to customary regulatory approvals, is expected to close in the second quarter of this year. While the terms of the transaction were not disclosed, it will be funded with cash on hand. The deal is not expected to impact Moody's 2022 financial results significantly. Kenya's second biggest lender, Equity Group, has made some new updates to its USSD service, which offers its customers a seamless banking experience. The bank says the newly updated USSD will now offer a unified service offering across mobile networks Safaricom, Airtel, Telcom, and Equitel. Some of the other new features on the platform include access to instant loans and self-registration of both existing equity and non-equity customers on the service. And finally, Mark Zuckerberg saw almost $30 billion wiped from his net worth following the record-breaking plunge of Meta shares on Thursday. With a current net worth of $84.3 billion, according to Forbes, it's the first time a 37-year-old has not been one of the 10 richest people on the earth since 2015. Shares of Meta dropped nearly 26% in after-hours trading after the firm announced lower than expected revenue figures, as well as a decline in Facebook users for the first time in its 18-year history. And those were your corporate headlines. Well, it's time now for us to take a short break and return. Here's what's coming up. Dozens arrested in Nigeria following a multi-million-dollar fraud investigation. And Egypt rejoins the JP Morgan Index after more than a decade.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
It's a little tense here. Bottles are being thrown. As they do so,
there are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas. So it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from the front
clear
line.
View of this front line position.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back to Global Business. Let's over to West Africa, where Nigeria's Financial Crimes Agency recovered an estimated $750 million in local and foreign currency linked to corruption and fraud last year. That's according to the country's information minister. Africa is the largest economy and energy producer, has for decades grappled with endemic corruption among the political elite, who many Nigerians blame for widespread poverty. According to the country's information minister, Lai Mohammed, the recovered funds also included digital currencies, among other proceeds of white-collar crime. Those implicated in the recovered funds were 96 financiers of terrorism, along with 424 associates. Authorities say the investigation has resulted in the arrest of 45 suspects who are to soon face prosecution and the seizure of assets. Well, staying in Nigeria, it's been just over 3 months since the government launched its own digital currency, the e-naira. The digital currency's adoption has not been quite as fast as envisaged at inception, after having recorded just over 690,000 downloads to date. But as CGTN's Deji Badmosi now reports from Lagos, Nigeria's central bank says that it is optimistic of an increased adoption of the digital currency this year.
The e-naira is Nigeria's response to the growing adoption of the cryptocurrency in the country. Nigeria's central bank launched the digital currency last October after it clamped down on cryptocurrency. From its launch date of October 25th last year, the e-naira has seen close to 800,000 downloads across over 160 countries.
Nigerians have continued to gradually adopt e-naira as a fast and reliable means of exchange. While transactions recorded range from P2P, that is person to person, or person to merchant, P2M, bank to person, person to bank, and bank to merchant, and merchant to bank, the person to bank and bank to person constituted 90% of what we see in the market.
There have been complaints by prospective users of the stringent conditions required to onboard and activate e-wallets. This might account for the low rate of person-to-person transaction, which is put at less than 10% at the moment.
Stringent validation procedures were enforced to preserve the integrity and security of the system. We feel that you must have a BVN and you must have an account to be able to access it. And we also find that this has created some kind of constraints on people about onboarding with BVN and the rest of them. But again, we believe that what we did by the use of the BVN is the best so as to avoid fraudsters from hacking into the system.
For many who have successfully onboarded and are now using the e-naira, they say it's been a seamless experience.
For the few times that I've done transactions, I mean, it's a very straightforward process, and the funds or value was received by the recipients almost immediately, in seconds. And I think that it's not, I mean, it's a good platform to transact. I wouldn't say it can replace any other platform I use in transacting right now, but I would say it's a great platform. And I think that with adoption, it can start to compete with all other platforms for payments and for transactions.
One of the major drawbacks of the e-naira platform is that it is designed only for the banked, and you would need a smartphone to be able to transact on it. But the CBN governor says that is now being addressed.
Nigerians without a smartphone, who represent the majority of the population, will soon be able to onboard and conduct transactions using e-naira. We are also working on a framework that will leverage the existing and new infrastructure to soon extend the services of e-naira to the unbanked.
The central bank governor says the Apex Bank is working to allow for the use of the e-naira on e-commerce platforms in the country. He also says plans are underway to begin a rigorous nationwide campaign to create better awareness for the e-naira. So with all these plans in place, we might see an uptick in the adoption of the e-naira. Deji Badimasi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Egypt has officially re-entered the JP Morgan Index, first after being dismissed in 2011 due to political unrest. Yasser Hakim looks at the reasons for rejoining the index and its benefits for the economy.
3 years of extensive negotiations have led to Egypt finally readmitted into the JP Morgan Index for emerging markets after being expelled 10 years ago.
There were political fears back then, which have led to the quick exit of investments from treasury bills and bonds following the 2011 revolution. This led to the dismissal of Egypt from the index at the time, driven by the uncertainty in the economic outlook for the country.
90% of investors voted Egypt back in 2022, making it the second member in the continent after South Africa and the only member from the Middle East.
Egypt's membership in the JP Morgan Index is another vote of confidence by foreign investors in the strength and resilience of the Egyptian economy in facing global challenges. Egypt managed to meet the bank's requirement, including prolonging the maturity of the state debt, modifying the yield curve, and increasing the percentage of foreign investments in government debt mechanisms, while increasing the size of each bond issuance.
Egyptian bonds will have an estimated weight of 1.85%, and green bonds will account for 1.2%, giving it room to attract up to $4.8 billion in inflows.
This index includes funds that invest more than $800 billion. The Egyptian economy, like all emerging markets, has suffered from lack of financing. Therefore, the Egyptian bills and bonds on the index will attract a new type of investor. This will reduce the cost of debt and protect the economy from the effects of expected global rate hikes on investments in the country.
The first line of action by the government will be issuing 14 bonds on the JP Morgan Index in 2022, with a value of up to $26 billion. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Authorities in Tunisia say that they are keen to strengthen economic cooperation with China. Tunisia is hopeful of an economic growth of 2.6% this year after COVID-19 induced contraction in 2020 and is seeking to boost its trade with China. CGTN's Adnan Shuashi has that report.
The Tunisian Minister of Economy and Planning noted that Tunis and Beijing aim to promote a win-win economic partnership which is based on friendship, goodwill and mutual economic interests.
We hope for this that we can establish partnership with our friend in China, because we know also they are very, very strong and present in China, and I'm sure that we can find a way to create a profitable win-win partnership.
The president of the Arab Institute of Chiefs of Enterprises, IECE, explained that China's economic model inspires many countries seeking economic growth and better management of resources.
The Chinese economic model emanates from a successful vision for the next decades in all sectors. China's local and international companies, as well as its population, benefit from this progress on all levels. It's a very good model to follow for Tunisia to boost exports and achieve sustainable economic growth.
In 2018, Tunisia integrated China's Belt and Road Initiative in order to expand trade and foreign investment.
The Belt and Road Initiative is the most ambitious and successful economic project in modern history. China is building infrastructure and helping states by boosting trade. China is creating job opportunities and encouraging the circulation of goods. Tunisia can be one of the main economic partners in this gigantic project for humanity.
Tunisian economists assert that the Chinese economy has recovered steadily since the pandemic hit the world, following the implementation of efficient COVID-19 containment measures and emergency relief for businesses.
Analysts maintain that Tunisia can also improve its economic indicators this year if it follows China's strategy of post-COVID economic recovery. China was the only major economy to register growth in 2020, which was a difficult year for the global economy. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Business incubators in Africa are said to be a relatively new concept which are yet to gain traction as real supporters of small business. However, social entrepreneur and founder of startup incubator Gambia, Aliou Jallo, says incubators are vital for the continent's development. Earlier, we spoke with Aliou about some of his work, which focuses on leveraging technology to tap into diaspora's investment potential.
One of the things that we're trying to do right now is we're exploring opportunities to use technology to drive investment opportunities from the diaspora within the Gambian context, as well as in the African context in general. So one of the reasons why we're trying to explore these opportunities, there's a lot of African diaspora, and there's a lot of remittances coming out from the African diaspora into the continent. And it is really important that those remittances are going through the right investment channels to help create that job opportunities that is needed within the African continent. So we're looking at solutions and ways in which we can actually collaborate with other tech firms to develop solutions that will help facilitate that investment opportunities for young Africans within the continent.
Just to give us a scope of what your particular incubator does in the Gambia, how many businesses have been through your incubator, and what does the success rate of those businesses look like after having been through the program or being through working with what you have to share with them through the incubator?
In the past 5 years, we've established in 2014, and we had the opportunity to support almost about 1,500 entrepreneurs within the past 5 years. We could have not done this without our partners that we've worked with, like the U.S. Embassy, the African Development Bank P2RS projects, and as well as the ITC, the International Trade Center, and GIZ. These are some of our major partners that we work with to create that employment, that opportunities for entrepreneurs. So basically what we do with these entrepreneurs, they're coming in from different programs. So we have different programs in terms of, we have incubation, acceleration, and design thinking programs. So one of the things that it's important for us within those programs is to support these entrepreneurs from the startup stage all the way to the scale-up stage. In the startup stage, well, we support them with a 6-month incubation. During this incubation program, entrepreneurs go through trainings, they go through mentorship, they go through access to financing. We also explore open them to opportunities in terms of networking opportunities as well with other entrepreneurs and other business within our networks. And this has gone to support a lot of entrepreneurs. And some of the success stories we have, entrepreneurs within the fashion industry, we have entrepreneurs within the tech industry, we have entrepreneurs within the service sector, as well as in the logistics industry, in the renewable energy industry. So these are the different sectors that culminate the programs that we have. So to just give you, for example, some of the success rate, we have almost about 90 to 90% success rate within the past 5 years of some of the entrepreneurs that graduated from the incubator still in business. We also have success stories within the agricultural sector. We have entrepreneurs that, especially in the poultry industry, we have Mohammed, who grew his business almost to 36,000 chickens and more. And I'm sure now he's even bigger. One of our success story, who went on to be a designer for Nike in the US, came back and we developed a fashion accelerator program that helped almost 25 young ladies to be fashion designers. So that was a women-only fashion program that we've launched last year.
So business incubation, Aliou, is a relatively new concept in developing countries, and the Africa region is no different. So what can you tell us about running an incubator that most people might not know, but it's crucial for the sustainability and success of incubators on the continent?
I think what is really important is also the quality of entrepreneurs that are actually, or the quality of people that are actually applying to these programs is really crucial in the sustainability of those businesses, because you need to ensure that you're able to have the resources as well. And the team that you have as well is really, really crucial, because you need to have that network of professional and skilled mentors and coaches around that could actually guide these entrepreneurs. And it's not just like people who just, okay, I graduate from university or high school, I have an idea, but I can actually mentor or coach a particular entrepreneur. You need a real life entrepreneur who has gone through the challenges of running a business to be able to guide and support these entrepreneurs within those challenges. And I think that is really, really, really fundamental when it comes to helping these entrepreneurs grow within the. And the other part as well is funding is really, really crucial, because a lot of the startups that we have applied for, that applied to our programs, had expressed that access to finance has been a major challenge. And most of them started their businesses because they want to support their families as well as to grow their business and make a better living for themselves. And you can see the high unemployment rate and the population growth within the African continent. It's growing rapidly, and we need to ensure that there are opportunities available for young Africans within the continent. And for us to do that, we need to create ecosystems. Incubators are really, really very fundamental in creating that business ecosystem within a country that could help entrepreneurs and businesses grow.
Well, Africa's largest cryptocurrency exchange says that it is looking to expand into the U.S. market, making it the latest international platform attempting to tap into one of the world's biggest population of digital asset investors. Luno says it is assessing regulatory regimes in all 50 states of America as it plans its rollout in the course of the year. Founded back in 2013, Luno has an estimated 9 million users from Asia to Africa. It currently offers trading in tokens, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. The company says it could soon add new coins chosen from the world's 10 most liquid cryptocurrencies. Well, time for a short break. Here's what's coming up when we return. Chinese companies lead the pack in issuing bonds. And 60 years on, we review how the American embargo has affected Cuba's economy.
Change is on the horizon. Through the shifting of time, Africa's emerging tech landscape is creating new channels.
There's a hunger for local African content globally.
Shaped by innovation, carved out by a new generation of digital entrepreneurs, sculpted by a mobile revolution, and trickling down to the most remote corners of the continent. TechSpot is seeking out the new concepts in technology, disrupting Africa's traditional sectors.
No one again, he can hold in guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The Excellency, thank you very much for your time now. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in. See, business business in Africa is high risk. After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Well, China continued to be the major issuer of company bonds from Asia in overseas markets. These bonds have helped boost the country's economic development. More than 300 Chinese companies issued nearly 600 types of mid to long-term bonds last year, with volume totaling $194 billion. The same year, more quality companies entered the international bond market, with investment-grade bonds accounting for 63%, up by 4.5 percentage points. Leading enterprises in new economy sectors like internet-related and new energy vehicles debuted on the U.S. bond market, attracting wide market attention. Mid- and long-term bonds in sustainable development or green sectors also increased in volume, boosting China's low-carbon development. Meanwhile, the U.S. House of Representatives is set to pass a multi-billion-dollar bill that would invest tens of billions in the U.S. tech sector. The bill started as a bipartisan push to bolster U.S. manufacturing and research, as well as ease the dependence on China for semiconductors. But it became mired in long-standing partisanship over U.S. policy on China. The 2,900-page bill includes $52 billion support to the country's chip research, while $45 billion has been earmarked to improve supply chains. It also authorizes $8.8 billion this year for Energy Department research and development programs, with that amount increasing each year through fiscal 2026. Well, it's been 60 years since the U.S. trade embargo was imposed on Cuba, a set of punitive economic, financial, and commercial sanctions maintained and reinforced by successive U.S. administrations from John F. Kennedy to Joe Biden. CGTN's Luis Chirino takes a look at the U.S. policy and its impact on the Caribbean nation.
Over the past 6 decades, many Cuban generations have been born and raised under the U.S. economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed on Cuba by former U.S. President John F. Kennedy. Initially, it was a response to Fidel Castro's expropriation of U.S. property and the country's increasing links to the former Soviet Union. The original trade prohibitions imposed by JFK took an extraterritorial nature, impacting Cuba's trade with third countries after President George H.W. Bush signed a law to strengthen the embargo in 1992.
The game changer was the Torricelli Bill. As soon as the U.S. government signed the Torricelli Bill, Canada, Mexico, the European Union were up in arms because the Torricelli Bill said to companies, to subsidiaries of American companies in these countries, that they could not do anything with Cuba. And that's against international law. That's exactly what extraterritoriality means.
And in 1996, after Cuba shot down 2 U.S. private planes flown by a Miami-based exile group previously warned about violating Cuban airspace, former U.S. President Bill Clinton signed legislation further targeting Cuba's trade relationships with third countries and restricting the president's ability to end the embargo without congressional approval. The United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly backed a Cuba-sponsored resolution demanding the end of the U.S. embargo for 29 years in a row. Washington has defended the embargo as a means to advance democracy, promote respect for human rights and freedom for the Cuban people, despite the ongoing international pressure to lift it.
And of course, it's the obsession that the United States has with Cuba, which is it's crazy. It's something that has no parallel in the history of international relations.
In 2014, the U.S. administration under Barack Obama favored a thaw of bilateral relations and moved to normalize relations with Cuba. But trade and travel restrictions were reimposed later under former U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump also imposed new restrictions on trade and family remittances. The policies even impacting the island's capabilities to fight COVID-19. President Joe Biden campaigned on promises to reverse many of Trump's Cuba measures, but as of now has not done so. Cuban authorities say the U.S. embargo has impacted all sectors of Cuban society, costing the island more than $147 billion since 1962, while inflicting a human damage that's beyond measure. Luis Chirino, CGTN, Havana.
Well, as the Winter Olympics get underway, Beijing is catching the world's attention. CGTN presents the Walk Beijing series. Our anchors take you to visit the most iconic tourist destinations in the city. At our first stop, my colleague Li Xuan takes a stroll around the former imperial moat and stops by the Palace Museum.
This is where tradition clashes with modernity, yet they coexist in the most amazing way. Today, I'm going to take you for a walk on my favorite place in Beijing, the Imperial Palace. And it all starts from here. This is the biggest palace complex in the world, according to the Guinness World Records, covering an area of 720,000 meters with almost 10,000 rooms in it. It's so big that it's a city in its own right, as suggested in its name, the Forbidden City. It was home for 24 emperors during the Ming and Qing dynasties. So for hundreds of years, it was not only the seat of a government, it was also the heart of a civilization. But now it houses the Palace Museum. This one was recognized as a UNESCO World Cultural Heritage Site in 1987 and is widely regarded as having the best collection of Chinese artifacts around the world. And this is the Northern Gate. This gate is called Shenwumen, the gate of divine prowess. This is a very important access into the Forbidden City. You can see there are 3 doorways. The empress and empresses would use the middle doorway, and for other members of the royal families, the eunuchs, the maid, officials, they would use the other doorway. Now, this is one of my favorite streets here in Beijing. Walking along the street is like traveling back in time, right? Here you've got this incredible view of the Imperial Moat. Guess what's its function? Well, it has several uses. For one, it's the first defense line against enemy who, would attack the palace. This Imperial Moat is about 4 meters deep, 52 meters wide, and about 3.5 kilometers long. It surrounds the entire Forbidden City. So it's not easy to get over it, swim over it. The second function, it was also a water supply system and drainage system. The rainwater would be discharged from the palace using the Imperial Moat. This is one of the most popular spots for taking pre-wedding photos. This amazing view of the corner tower of the Forbidden City. It serves as a defense tower, just as the lofty walls of the palace, the Imperial Moat, and the giant gate towers. All the marbles you see there, the stones to build this palace, are transported from quarries close to the city. And legend has that in the winter, water were poured into the ground to create this icy superhighway so that the heavy stones, marbles, can be moved along the surface. Pretty smart for the people back in the days. Now, turning the corner, you get this transition from the royal vibe to this quiet residential area, right? This is in sharp contrast to the elite culture represented by the court life, the Grand Palace. The hutongs here, the ancient little streets here, they represent the culture of grassroots Beijingers. And you can see bus route number 5 here. Interestingly, in the past days, people traveled by carriages and horses. And now it's a completely different picture. And finally, we're here, the front gate of the Forbidden City. This is known as the Meridian Gate, Wumen, right? This is the largest gate of the Forbidden City. Also, the most imposing one, as you can see. It has a very unique structure. This is a concave layout, you can see. This is an important gate. A lot of ceremonies are being held here. And now we're walking along this pretty nice street lined with restaurants and little shops. And we're gonna go in to one of the restaurants and check out all the traditional, the most authentic Beijing food. So let's go. So this is how you eat Peking duck properly. I'm gonna get right into it. Ooh, it's still hot. So good. This is Beijing, a diverse city with so many facets. Come explore it, you'll love it.
And now for another look at the market. We take a look now at commodities. It was Brent crude that saw the most gains on the board, gaining more than 2.3%. Oil prices surged to fresh 7-year highs on Friday, headed for a 7th straight weekly increase, driven by ongoing concerns about supply disruptions, particularly political turmoil among major world producers. Let's take a short break. When we come back, here's what you can expect. South African wine producers pin hopes on exports despite a low harvest season.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
South African wine producers are pinning their hopes on exports despite a smaller grape crop expected for the 2022 season. South Africa is one of the top 10 wine-producing nations in the world, but extreme heat, disease, and a decrease in vineyards have shrunk production. Producers are, however, anticipating a better quality crop, which they believe will suit the palates of wine lovers at home and around the world. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Award-winning wine producer Beyers Kloof is anticipating a healthier, richer crop this season after a colder and wetter winter.
We've had probably the most rain in the past 5, 6, 7 years. Before that, it was probably 2014 that we had maybe a little bit more rain than last year, but much better rain. I'm happy with the grape season. We were a bit later with flowering and as well budding, which is good. The bunches will be a bit lighter, so that means, which is positive, better quality, smaller berries, and definitely better wines.
The onset of the hot summer months brought disease and pests. Viruskluft contained these quickly, but it was a bit more challenging for farmers, especially in the Northern Cape, as temperatures soared over 40 degrees Celsius.
The vines are not acclimatized to these warmer conditions because they had a cool season. And if you pick these grapes and you take it to the cellar, those berries will be dried up and you won't get as much juice extracted from that berries, and obviously that will have a negative effect on the total yield of the vine.
COVID-19 also took its toll on the industry. Restrictions squeezed alcohol sales, slowed exports and new investment. Producers are pinning their hopes on a boost in global demand.
We're competing with the best wines in the world. If you look at quality, you get very good value for it. We focus mainly on pinotage, and that's our main focus. We do pinotage blends, pinotage straight wine, and then some interesting things with pinotage wines like a port, which I'm not allowed to call port, but we call it a Cape Vintage. And then also pinotage rosé, and then an interesting blend with white pinotage and Chenin Blanc.
The main countries being exported on top of the list is the UK, followed by Germany and then the USA. And then the top varieties exported in terms of free on board value is indeed Sauvignon Blanc, followed by Chenin Blanc and then Chardonnay. We are working on preferential trade agreements with China and then also a couple of countries in Africa.
South Africa's wine industry makes a valuable contribution to GDP and employment. It suffered several setbacks over the last few years through drought, shrinking vineyards and COVID-19. A slight recovery last year put the industry back on track, and it's hoped this trend can be carried into 2022. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Nigerian makeup artist turned TikTok content creator Oni Mary continues to wow her audiences with skillful use of makeup to create faces of popular figures in Nigerian history. Her ability to draw lifelike images on her chest while facing a mirror has earned her over thousands of followers and views for each post. Let's take a look.
With foundation and eyeliner, Nigerian makeup artist Oni Mary is painting faces of celebrities and notable icons on her body. The 23-year-old began training to become a professional makeup artist 2 years ago, but later discovered it was not her passion.
That fateful day, I was watching DSTV, I saw a particular man, and I just said, okay, let me just try with this man. Let me paint this man on my chest and see if I can really do this, because I love it and I have passion for it. So I took my brow pencil, my foundation and my brush, and I started painting the man. It came out nice.
Oni's first portrait was late American rapper Tupac, which garnered her popularity on social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook. Now a TikTok sensation with the name Ann Pella, the young artist wows over 7,000 followers with portraits accompanied by music.
I don't get all my paintings at once, because sometimes whenever I start to paint and I get to the nose or the eyes and I'll feel like this person doesn't look like what I'm about to paint, so I'll clean it and start all over again. And most times I don't get to start all over again because of my energy. It depends on how full my energy is, and sometimes I'm lucky, sometimes I'm not lucky, which means sometimes whenever I start to paint, I'm lucky to get the paintings at once. Sometimes I can try 2 to 3 times before I can get the particular painting I want to paint.
Some of Oni's fans believe there's room for improvement.
For now, she's good, but I don't think she's there yet. But I think maybe before the end of the year, she will definitely improve. Maybe she just don't have all the right tools yet to get that there.
Her painting takes over 7 to 8 hours to complete, which she says strains her body most times. The artist has created over 23 body portraits so far. Oni hopes to build her brand further and monetize her skills. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Well, let's take a final look at the markets with Forex trade. A weaker dollar saw emerging currencies add some value against the greenback. Kenya's shilling, which has been struggling to hold on to any gains it's made recently, was flat against the dollar. South Africa's rand missing out on that dollar weakness. It was down almost 1.7%. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business. Remember that you can send your feedback to contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. From me, Hannah Viviers, and the rest of the Global Business team, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.